And I'm going to have you introduce yourself in a minute. My name is Pastor Dave. I'm lead pastor of Royal Oak Victory Church, and it's great that we have an audience that is tuned in today for what we call our financial panel part 2. And the reason why we're doing part 2 is because if you are part of our church, and I know that some of you tuning in aren't, but if you have been part of our church, either in-house or online, you'll know that we did a series we called Dollars and Cents, and we ended the series with a financial panel, and we encouraged people in the congregation to text in their questions. And we were quite surprised. I guess we shouldn't have been surprised, but we had so many questions. Now, we've done this before. We've done it on family issues. We've done it on marriage issues. But when we did it on financial issues, we got 3 times as many questions as we got in any other panel. And so that's why we're here today to tackle some of the questions that we didn't have time to do during our Sunday service. So it's really good to have you here, and it's really good to have you guys here. And so for those of the audience who weren't here for financial panel number 1, why don't you share your name and maybe what you do?
My name is Sean Ogunshola. I've been a finance professional, been in the bank for about 17 years in Canada. Recently left my role, an executive role with a bank, and started private consulting last year. Been attending ROVC, myself and my family, for about 15 years. I serve on the board of management and also serve with our prayer team. And I love to golf whenever there's nothing else to do, which is very rare. I love to get out there when the weather is great and just put in a round of golf.
Yeah, wow, wonderful to have you here today, Sean.
I am Marilyn Olson-Blewett, and I have been a financial professional for a number of years, too many to count, I think, actually. 17 years as an investment advisor, and prior to that, as different roles as a CPA and a CFA, hold those designations, which is a chartered professional accountant and a chartered financial analyst. And I am on the board of directors, or board of management here at the church, and also as an usher and a small group leader. And yes, generally I love to I like to play pickleball, I like to play golf, and hang out with my 4 kids, young adults now, so not even kids.
Yeah, wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
My name is Morax Okusami. I'm a CPA. I am also an auditor. I provide financial statement audit services to both public and private organizations. I've been with ROVC for about 17 years. I serve on the worship team and on the media team. And when I'm not busy or when I'm bored, I do play video games.
Video games?
Yes.
Fantastic. And of course, for those of you who don't know, my name is Dave Myers. I'm the lead pastor here. I've been here 28 years, and it's been a real blessing pastoring this church family. And when I'm not busy here, I like to go hiking, motorbike riding, and of course, because we're so close to the Rocky Mountains, we love to camp as well. But it's great to have you guys here. I just want to preface that the advice that our panel is giving is not complete financial advice that you can take to the bank. We're just here to share our experience and our wisdom and just help guide these conversations as they go. So we have a bunch of questions. They're kind of divided in a few areas. The first area is debt as an asset. And so the whole topic of debt came up quite a bit at our last panel. But some are wondering about debt. And I guess the question it has to do with good debt, bad debt. The question is a mortgage considered debt? And if so, is it okay to have one? And so I'm just going to throw that out to you guys.
Sure, I'll start. A mortgage is considered debt. Yes, definitely. You owe money to someone, and so that would be a debt. It is a debt that is a long-term debt because of the cost of housing. And remember, if you were at the first session, one of the first sessions, one of the four walls of the pillars of a financial plan are based around your having food, shelter, clothing, necessary clothing, and transportation. So of course, having shelter is very, very important. And if you choose to have a home and you choose to have a mortgage, then that is indeed debt. The point is that it's a long-term debt. It's not, and it's an investment that you have, an investment in the house as well as the debt. So it has a different, in my mind at least, a different, I guess, a way of differentiating it from credit card debt and from consumer debt, car debt. Those would be the other types of short-term debt. This is long-term debt. So a mortgage is debt, and it's necessary in our environment.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share on that?
Yeah, in addition to that comment, I also want to say that it's a debt that also has an asset attached to it. So while it's a debt, you also know that it's potentially can increase your net worth in the long run as you continue to pay it down. So in my opinion, one of those good debt you have out there, provided you have sufficient cash flow to service the debt. If you don't have enough resources to pay the debt on a monthly basis, then it becomes a struggle. So yes, it's a debt, but it's also, of course, against an asset that potentially would take you to a higher net worth.
Yeah, wonderful. And so you can use debt as a leverage, as long as you use it with wisdom and for the right things. It kind of spills into this next question. If wealth is about net worth, what's wrong with debt if your asset is very well above your liabilities? And so, Morax, maybe you want to speak into that.
Yeah, like if your assets are very well above your liabilities, then that's a good way to look at how you should manage your investments and manage your, I would say, net worth from an asset or liability point of view. But when it comes to debt, you do want to make sure that that debt is generating, if it's an investment, if you're taking debt to invest in a business, you want to make sure that that debt is generating revenue and profits that will be sufficient to cover the interest. That is when it becomes good debt, because it's an investment you've made and the returns more than cover the interest cost of holding the debt.
Yeah. Yeah, so really the whole principle is just doing everything we can to stay away from bad debt.
Yes.
And of course, bad debt would be, as you said, Marilyn, credit card debt, car loans, and personal loans and things like that are not going to get us ahead.
If I could just add one thing to that, is just that the important key to a very solid financial plan is to not have debt in those areas, to have zero debt and not get into debt. So once you've got out of debt, is to stay out of debt in those consumer, short-term, non-asset related debts. Yeah. So that's a very fundamental piece of a financial plan.
Correct. And also depreciating an asset. So if you buy a lot of cars, it's not going to worth a lot more in a few years. So you want to stay away from those as well.
Yeah, so really a good financial plan would, a big part of it would be to be reducing our debt as much as possible, starting with bad debt and then moving forward from that. The next question has to do with investments, and this is, you know, as you know, it's kind of a wild west out there, especially when it comes to some investments, particularly in the area of cryptocurrency. So the question is what are your thoughts on crypto, and how do you see it being a benefit or liability or?
Well, again, this is my thought and not a financial advice. One thing we always recommend is diversification. You want to diversify your investment so that you can balance out the risk. Now, crypto is new, I mean, relatively new compared to all the investment instruments out there. And a lot of information and platforms have been built. So what is important is for you to be well educated about what this is. You need to know exactly what you're getting into. Number two, how does it fit into your overall financial plan? Can you afford to lose that investment? Because you're talking about an investment that really doesn't have an asset backed it up. It's not backed up by any assets. So it's just an electronic algorithms. So really, you can't take anything and liquidate that investment. So as long as you know that you can walk away from that investment and it won't affect your family situation financially, then it's a way to diversify. But before you make that step, my recommendation is be well educated, well informed. Make sure you read and ask the right questions, and you can determine at that point if it fits into your overall financial plan.
Yeah. No, very good. Anybody else want to wade into the crypto water?
I agree 100%. And the use of a cryptocurrency, whichever one or however they are, you know, because it is such a vast way to even quantify what is a cryptocurrency and not knowing necessarily, is to leave it to the professionals that have also, could be through money managers that have it in their portfolios, that's what they do 24/7, 365 days of the year, that they can put that into the portfolios under their advisement. But to try to do it yourself, if you're not aware of it, can be very, very risky. However, having said that, to have a risky asset in your whole portfolio can actually reduce the whole overall risk of your portfolio through diversification. So it can be helpful, but if you don't know what you're doing, then leave it to a professional.
Okay, very good. Here's one on government bonds and other instruments. If they yield more than interest payments would net, is debt okay, assuming there is no counterplay risk? And so, what do you guys think about that?
I assume that question, that person intended to take debt to buy the bonds.
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, I'm going to go back to the answer that Morax gave the earlier question about if your payment, net of tax, is sufficient to take care of that, your income net of tax, sufficient to take care of the payment, without having to go back to any other residual income that you have, of course, why not? And we also understand that you're talking about government bond here. It's very, very safe. So it's not one of those junk bonds out there. Typically, it's long-term. So as long as it's not going to have a negative impact, net impact on your financial situation, again, a very good way to diversify your portfolio.
Okay, so using it wisely, using debt to increase your investments. Marilyn, do you want to say anything about that?
I'll say a little bit, just only from the standpoint of using leverage does magnify the gains because you're using money that isn't yours to magnify what the gain is. It can also magnify the loss. Now, in bond cases, it's not going to go down, but if the increase of interest rates that while you have a locked-in bond and the interest rate goes up on, say, a line of credit, then you may have that. But also the after-tax. You have to include to do that, to ensure that you take into account the tax situation. So you're paying after-tax interest on your line of credit, and you're getting pre-taxed interest on the bond. So you can't quantify one against the other. You have to include the after-tax interest in that.
Just quickly, the issue of taxes, if you're not fully educated, you really want to seek advice on that one. All these instruments are treated differently depending on what they are when it comes to tax treatment. It may not be worth it if you look at how much you're going to pay in taxes, depending on your incremental revenue that tax is going to give you. So before you open that laptop and go to self-directed investment, you want to get advice on taxes on that asset you want to buy to be sure that you're not going to end up in a negative position overall.
Yeah. So really doing your homework. Yeah. Okay, here's one, Morax, if you could take a run at this. As a new immigrant over 40 years of age, how do you go about saving money for retirement?
Yeah, and I know a lot of people that are in that situation, moving into a new country. And I know this answer may sound simplistic, but you just have to start saving for it. You're never too late to start saving. And it's coming up with a plan to say, from my income, I want to start putting a certain percentage, whatever percentage works based on your cash flow. But it's never too late to start saving, talk to a financial planner, and see how you can start putting together a plan to save for retirement, because it's something we all have to do.
Yeah. And of course, the earlier you start, the better.
Yes.
And, you know I shared a little bit of my story at the last panel, but we were church planters in eastern part of Canada. We certainly weren't making a whole lot of money, but we have over the years learned the importance of saving and paying off debt. So that became a major focus for us, and that means just living simpler. Saying no to things you'd like to say yes to, and you know, finding out how you can do things more financially feasible. And you know, it does build up. I mean, these savings and investments do build up. So for me, I think starting now, I know Marilyn, I think you quoted David Ramsey, the best time to plant a tree was 40 years ago, but the second best time to plant a tree is today.
Yeah.
So to just start, and it's amazing how you can gain some real momentum with that. You know, there's some questions here about buying a house and paying down a mortgage. And the first question is, what is a better investment, buying a house or investing in the stock market?
And maybe I'll start with that. And I think it's down to your peace of mind in terms of what you want to do. I would say for individuals, having that big mortgage and knowing that it's looming there may not give them peace of mind. And for them, priority may be to try and pay that down faster than putting money in investments. And for other people, they are comfortable with having the mortgage, knowing that there's a plan to pay it off over a number of years and to take a little bit extra rather than paying it down to put it in an investment. But with investments, again, there is risk with investments, so you need to do the proper research and make sure it's something that would give you a better return than you might have if you're paying down the mortgage.
Okay, very good. Anybody else on that?
Well, you can always calculate the return on both investment approach. Also, look at the risk that's attached to each of them. Think about this. If I'm assuming the new house is for rental purposes, I'm assuming it's not a residential purpose, your primary residence. So let's assume you're buying it as a rental property. It's all good as long as you have a renter in there. In a down market that you can't find a renter into that property and you have to keep paying your mortgage, make sure you have sufficient savings to take care of it. Mm-hmm. Because you have to pay your mortgage no matter what. That's something you have to think about. And then if you have to look at the overall return on, when you say stock market, it's so broad. So what exactly do you want to do? You want to go into fixed income, you want to go into equity, you want to go into bond? There's so many platforms. Again, those are the things you need to research and understand that what's your risk appetite. If you are, north of 50 years, you really don't want to be too aggressive because you don't have the runway to recover. depending on how much you lose. If you're much younger, maybe you can take on much more risk. Again, talking to a professional will certainly help you to define your risk profile and the appetite that you should be responsibly going for given your financial situation.
Yeah. And so certainly the atmosphere in the community, the city you live in, the situation plays a big role in that. And you certainly don't want to buy a house as a rental property and have it sit empty month after month. And I know we have a house on our block, and we've lived on our block for quite a few years. And I think it sat empty for 8 months. Couldn't rent it. Of course, now it's a totally different environment, and it's hard to find a rental property here in the city now. So that is the risk you take, and I guess that's stuff you want to keep an eye on as much as you can. Here's a question. I want to buy a second home for rental/investment purposes. My question is, should I pay off my first home before purchasing my second? Marilyn, do you want to?
Yeah, I would love that one because I would say, was this the one with that actually had a dollar value attached to it?
Yes, it
Okay.
was $50,000.
$50,000.
Yes.
Okay. In the question, it was there was $50,000 available to pay down the mortgage of the first of something, or to buy the house. So, what I would suggest is, and I'm not even suggesting. What I would do in that situation would be to pay down my existing mortgage, and then save those mortgage payments, which won't take very long to get back up to $50,000, to then go buy a house. And what that does is it, for one thing, precludes you from having 2 mortgages, which can be quite daunting. So it's not always about the number of how much the mortgage is, it's how you feel about the debt. And that can be very heavy on your spirit and your soul to hold an exorbitant amount of debt. 2 homes in this environment can be very pricey. So that's what I would say, is that using the funds to pay down the existing mortgage rather than starting something new, and then use a sinking fund approach to get ready for the next mortgage.
I just want to also add to that, you don't get the benefit of investment property until you really pay off the mortgage. Because the rental income is going to go to pay the mortgage, so really you don't get any net cash flow to yourself. It all depends on how much equity you have. So you really want to understand a lot of things about your financial situation, because there's something, if you go ahead and buy that second property, you're getting $2,000 in rental income, you're paying $2,000 in mortgage. You ask yourself, okay, you're not really better off when it comes to cash flow, and you are like 55. So it takes 25 years to pay it off. Before you start getting the advantage of that cash flow, you're going to be well into your senior years. Now, that's okay if that works for your financial situation. You just have to understand the landscape and understand the runway that you have.
Okay, very good. Our next question is paying rent a form of debt?
I can take that one. And I believe the answer is no. Like, paying rent is you're paying for a service you're receiving. And it may be because you've made a choice not to invest or buy a house at the moment. So paying rent is like paying for your bus tickets. You're getting a service, someone is providing you with a house to live in. And so it's definitely not debt. It's a choice an individual has made to not have to deal with fixing the house yourself, because the landlord is going to deal with any repairs and maintenance that have to do with it. It's a personal choice, but it's not a debt.
Okay. We'll move along into a different area. Here's a great question. What are your thoughts on lending money to family and friends? How do you ensure that it does not affect the relationship? Is it a wise thing to do overall?
Well, we can look right to the Bible to get the answer on that one, because there is a proverb, and it says, it says, well, the way that it says, do not provide surety to another, so don't provide that, don't co-sign a loan, and you are, and you're basically being ridiculous if you were to lend money to friends and family. And the reason why is because it affects the relationship. And God wants us to be in tune with the relationships around us, with ourselves, with others, and with Him. And so providing that loan, or it provides that, it's an imbalance of a relationship. So what I would say to that is, if somebody is requiring money, provide it as a gift, and don't have any strings attached to it. And if they wanted to pay it back, that is on them to do that. But you're not assuming that that's what they're going to do. And that just protects you, it protects them, it protects the relationship.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean they're going to like you for it. And that's a choice, a financial decision. In a short run, maybe nobody's happy. In the long run, people will see sense, because I always say that any money you cannot walk away from, don't lend it to family members. If you know you can walk away from it, but you want to say, you know what, I'm going to lend you this money, but you know you are ready to give it to them, but you want to hold them accountable by using that term, that's okay. But if you cannot walk away from it, because most likely things are not going to go as planned, and it will really damage your relationship. So as long as you're ready to walk away from it and not feel bad about it, well, then you can manage that. But if it's something you cannot walk away from, then you want to think twice about that decision.
Yeah. And I think looking at the track record of the individuals that you may lend money to is a good a principle, something to keep in mind. I know that we've lent money to family members, but that being said, of course, close family members, they've proven very faithful in the little things, paying off little debts, and that gave us more motivation to step into lending them more money. But I do agree that if you do lend money to friends and family, you have to be ready to just walk away and have it not affect your relationship.
And I know, if you're asking that question, you already know that you shouldn't do it. Because you already know, you're just looking for validation. So, you know what is right and what you shouldn't do, because it's really hard for us to give advice to every situation, which is going to be different.
Yeah.
But I trust that God will give you that advice and say, do it or don't do it. But what we're saying here is just general principle, but if we bring it down to the individual situations, it's really difficult to advise on this platform.
Exactly. It's very individualistic. I would say it would really be good to take it to prayer, feel the leading of the Holy Spirit in it all, and because it can completely hijack very positive relationships. It can poison them for sure. Here's another question. What do you do when you notice your generosity is encouraging a bad behavior in the people you give to?
Yeah, and I know this is one that my wife says I'm impacted by. I think you have to look to God for leading, because if people truly need help, we should be there to provide it. However, if we are seeing that they are taking advantage of the situation and always coming back when you know that they could probably try and do things themselves, then you need to call that person aside and have a conversation with them and not encourage that bad behavior. But I think we need God's help for this and leading.
There's no doubt about it. I asked my wife one question because I found myself in that situation. I said, if you look at the story of the Good Samaritan, it's all good because that merchant was actually injured. What if the merchant wasn't injured and just pretending to be injured? How do you know? You can't tell, because he's right there on the ground pretending. You go there to help, and then suddenly you become the victim. We need God's guidance. We certainly do. And when you're not sure if it's a check in your spirit, my recommendation is take it to God in prayer. And until you have that release, you really don't want to take that step. Because sometimes people really want to go and take advantage of your generosity because it happens. But I believe that God will give us that guidance.
Yeah. You know, there's a verse in the book of Philippians. Paul is praying for the church, the Philippian church. And part of his prayer, he says, I pray that your love may abound more and more with all knowledge and discernment. And some people, they just read the first part, that we should have abounding love. And you know, that word abounding means like a waterfall, which is just love, 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 give, 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 give. But you know, the interesting thing is Paul says you need to have abounding love with all knowledge and discernment. And I call it the power of wise love. And that means not giving people what they want, but being discerning and giving them what they need. So very important, and some people get lost in this. They feel that as Christians, you know, they'll know us by our love and generosity. It's all very good, but it does take wisdom in knowing what people really need to flourish. Yeah. You know, some stuff on credit cards. What should be my general attitude towards a credit card? Who wants to jump into that one?
Bernie had a great answer last time, so.
Did I? Wish I could remember what it was. Go ahead.
Okay, so credit card, in the system that we're in right here, you needed to build your credit history, a credit track record, so that's required. Credit card is not bad as long as you can pay off the balances. Once you start to carry balances on your credit card, it becomes a burden. If you have a $5,000 on a credit card and you're only making minimum payment, it will take you years, a lot of years to pay it off, if you ever did. And by the time you even pay it off, you will have paid like 2 or 3 times that amount in interest. So the question is that helping your net worth or is it damaging it? So if you cannot pay off your credit card, you probably want to keep it somewhere and stay with cash. Cash means your debit card and good old cash. And until you can get to the point where you can pay off the balances, then I'll say you want to really stay off credit card.
Yeah, and when you say pay off the balances, you're talking monthly, paying it off every month.
That's correct.
Not paying 1 cent interest.
You want to pay off whatever is due that month. So you all know how a credit card works. If you have $400 due for that month, that is the balance for that previous month, pay it off. So you don't carry interest for the next month. So that's what I mean by that.
Yeah. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I'll just add also, thank you, thanks for that answer. Is that using a credit card, there is a motivation that we just have where we're that much further away from feeling cash and feeling the effect of it until after the transaction has happened, and maybe further down the road when we have interest and penalties on an unpaid credit card. Whereas coming out of, if money that comes out of our account by good old-fashioned cash out of your pocket or out of your debit card, there's studies that show that you actually will spend less because it hurts. You can feel it moving out of your accounts. So that's what I would, also just caution is, yes, a credit card is useful if you're using it to what you need it for. And that should actually come down to your cash flow planning or your budgeting, if you want to call it budgeting or cash flow planning, that you are constrained, whether you use any method of cash or cash equivalent, is to have that constraint so you know what you're spending, where you're spending it, why you're spending it. And so the credit card isn't the problem. The credit card is just a piece of plastic. It's what's behind the credit card.
Yeah. Now, you teach our Financial Peace course. This is a course that we offer here at the church, Marilyn. You're the facilitator. And in that course, maybe fill me in, do you have everyone in the course cut up their credit card? Or is it just some?
It's a volunteer. It's
Okay.
on a volunteer basis.
Okay, you don't make them.
No, but I give the offer to cut up the credit cards because a lot of people come to, not everybody, but there's a lot that come to Financial Peace that come because of the debt issue that has been caused by credit cards. They have so much credit card debt. And Financial Peace is such a tremendous, it just is a really excellent way to have a plan to pay that off, and good motivation, and it's also, biblically led, from Dave Ramsey teaching, and it's a fantastic course, but the credit card cutting up is based on a volunteer basis because it just becomes too much, and there's a lot of tears that go with credit card getting, it's tears, it's a separation of, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? But there's so much support and so much teaching on how to get through all that. So if credit cards are causing you the problem, and remember, the credit card is just a piece of plastic, it's what you're doing behind it. There are ways to get out of it, out of debt. And it's not hopeless, it's not, and people are doing it all the time. And it could be cutting up the credit card and actually, getting rid of it to get yourself out of debt and start on a new trajectory.
Yeah. Yeah, so really it's an act of, it's being ruthless. And it reminds me of the verse where Jesus said, if your eye offends you, pluck it out. If your hand offends you, cut it off. And if your credit card is constantly getting you in a snare, cut it in half. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's very good. Here's a question. Is it wrong to buy luxurious things if you can afford it without going into debt?
Well, in my opinion, it's not wrong. Look, you work for your money, you enjoy the money God has given you. Again, provided there's no further instruction from God on how to spend that money, which you are disobeying. So assuming that there's no disobedience happening when it comes to your financial allocation, and that, again, there's no debt, you just enjoy the life that God has given you. That's my opinion. But you got to be wise about it and make sure that there's so many other ways to impact people around us. Let's live a life of purpose. And that purpose must be beyond who we are, what we live for. Let's live life beyond ourselves. The Bible says we are the light of the world. And for you to be a light means that when you're shining, you're giving that kind of influence and impact to other people beyond yourself. So when God gives you the resources, it's not only for you to enjoy. The Bible says that it gives seed to the sower and bread to the eater. So when that resource comes to you, it's not only for you to eat, it's also for you to sow. Yeah. So you want to make sure you don't eat your seed because you cut off the source of blessings.
Yeah, very good. So one of our values here, of course, is living simply so you can be generous. And one way to be generous is simplify your life. But really it comes down to a person's individual walk with the Lord and their own conscience and what they feel God has called them to. So, here's a great question. Is it better to take a student loan? This is for younger people. And live on campus, so the campus of a university or college, or stay at home and save money when my parents live in the same city. So I can live at home, save some money, or get out of the house and live on campus. Morax.
And we're going through this now because our daughter is just about to start university. And of course, one of the conversations is, well, if you're going to be, and this is just my opinion, if you're going to be in the University of Calgary and you live 30 minutes to the university, as a parent, I'd rather save money having you at home than to pay that money for residency and eating out at school. So I wouldn't recommend going into debt when you have the option of not being in debt and being able to do school from home. I think there are a lot of studies that show that when students leave the university with a lot of debt, it's a big psychological burden on them, being a new graduate looking for a job, because you have the pressure of having to pay off the loan, having to look for a place to rent. And so if you do have the opportunity to get free food, free accommodation, take that opportunity rather than paying a loan and interest on it.
Okay, very good. Anybody else want to step into that one?
That's a good answer.
Okay. The school system. So this is another one that is related to young adults or children mostly. Tell our children, the school system tell our children they need to build their credit history, and the only way is by getting a credit card. How do you discourage this, and is it a slippery slope to more debt?
I'll start with this one only. I'm just going through this with my kids, young adults as well, because it is about, and we touch on this in Financial Peace as well, not just touch on it, we talk about it quite extensively, is about the credit score. And, you know, with the price of housing, we pretty much need to have a credit score. But if we do everything for the credit score, then it's a tough road to go down. So I agree, it could be a slippery slope. However, I think if we could teach kids how to use a credit card for their purpose and not for the purpose of what the credit card companies want you to use it for, because remember, the credit card companies are excellent marketers. I mean, really, the top is top notch of the top notch for marketing, and they want to get you to have certain behaviors and habits with these things, which is just charge, charge, charge. Well, if we can start with cash flow planning and budgeting and how to pay off your full and entire credit card debt every month, and not put anything on there that you can't afford, that you don't already have the cash for. So, for instance, like paying up front. If you're going to go to the store and buy, you're going to go shopping for clothing, and you've got $100 in your budget, put $100 on the credit card before you go to the store, and you're done. And you don't even have to worry about it when you get home. So things like that, we can actually, use it to maybe create that credit score that is helpful, because in this environment, it's a tough environment for, you need credit. And how can you do that effectively and efficiently with the use of a credit card?
Mm-hmm. So it's really teaching our children how to use the powerful tool. It is a tool, but it's a tempting tool, but can be a useful tool as well.
That's right.
Anybody else want to step into that, or we're good there? Okay. This is a pretty open-ended question. We could probably talk about it for quite a while. How do you recognize a financial scam?
Well, if it's too good to be true, then you want to pause. Typically, you're being promised something in your heart of heart that this is really too good. And then secondly, if you believe that the promised return is higher than what it should be. And lastly, just listen to your inner voice. Your spirit is going to give you guidance. It's also important that we are as educated as we can be when it comes to what are the new approaches to scam out there. I was in the financial world for a long time, and oh my, every day we were dealing with different kind of scams and situations that you never heard of before. And it's becoming sophisticated every day. But if you stick to your own principle, you have your own financial principle, and stick to it, most likely you're going to avoid most of the scams out there. What do I mean by that? For example, when it comes to investment, this is your investment approach. When it comes to going to partnership with somebody, this is your approach. When it comes to responding to emails from people you don't know, this is your approach. You already have that set. And when it comes to the way you go on the internet and just put your credit card out there, you have all that, you have your principle, you will protect yourself from most of these things. Because people track your behavior, they track your interests, and they take advantage of it. That's what it is. So set your own boundaries and stick to it.
Yeah. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I fully agree with what Sean has said. There are so many scams. I think maybe some of the basic things to protect yourself is not providing any of your personal details on the phone. Like every day I'm getting texts saying UPS wants you to include your information for something that is coming. So don't provide anyone with your password on the phone. Don't provide anyone with your credit card details. They would never ask. If it was a bank calling you, they wouldn't ask you for a password or ask you for your PIN code. So anything that is supposed to be your secret information, like your password or your PIN code, once someone is asking you for that, it's most likely a scam.
Mm-hmm. And don't click on links. Be very careful. They come they come as a test, email, and any call that is not solicited, you really want to be watchful and be careful. When somebody calls you and they say, okay, we're calling from so bank, your credit card has been compromised, please call this number back. If you want to make that call, if you think you want to make that call, make sure you hear the dial tone before you make the call. Because what happens is that they don't drop, and then you think you're making a call, the same person will pick it up and say, hello, how can I help you? And suddenly you're talking to the same individual. Make sure you have a dial tone. However, every credit card, every bank, they have their number at the back of the credit card and the back of the debit card. Call that number, not the number you're given. Yeah. Those are the boundaries I kind of talked about. And if you can do that, you avoid many of these scams out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are so many. I remember we were looking for a new dog a few years ago, and of course you search the ads, and there was a wonderful ad for a French bulldog. This is how crazy this stuff gets. Free to a good home has to be a good home. So, I responded, and they said, sent an email with the story that my wife bought the dog. It's still a puppy, but unfortunately our marriage was on the rocks. She ended up leaving, and now I'm stuck here with the dog, and now when I look at the dog, I just think of my wife. That was the email. And we're looking for a good home. Are you a good home? And so I said, yeah, we're a good home. And they said, well, the dog's free. Normally $2,000 dog. But, the only thing you have to pay is the transportation of the dog. And so I knew right away that, anyway, I asked where they lived. And, of course, they live as far from me as possible. They live in St. John's, Newfoundland. So being a little bit mischief, I said, St. John's? I said, what a stroke of luck. My sister lives in St. John's. Just give me your address, and she can pop by and pick the dog up. She's going to be visiting us this summer. She'll bring the dog with her. And the correspondence went dead. So anyway, I just say that to say there's just so many out there, dogs, vehicles, like you say, links. We really need to be careful. Yeah. But I think the principle is if it's too good to be true, then it probably is too good to be true. We're going to wrap this up in a bit. Any more advice that you want to give when it comes to the area of investment, debt reduction, retirement? Maybe we'll just do one quick one through.
Yeah, I just want to say two things. Number one, please do not underestimate the place of a professional when it comes to your financial matters. There are so many professionals out there when it comes to advisory services. you want to talk to the right person and make sure you're talking to people that know. Then secondly, you also want to know exactly your purpose when it comes to finances and wealth. You want to make sure you stay connected who you are in Christ and be clear about what your purpose is. The Bible says there's nothing that we have that he hasn't been given to us. And when he gives to us, it's for a reason, for a purpose. You want to understand what that is. And it's not until you have $1 million that you start to become relevant. The Bible says if you're faithful in little, you're faithful in much. What that means that God will not direct a lot more to you if you are not faithful with the little that you currently have. And that's what we're talking about. How you manage your debt, how you manage your resources, how you manage your income, how you pay your tithe, even when it's so small. When you start to do that, God will trust you with more and more and more. But when you start to wait for until time you have a lot before you can be faithful, that time is never going to come. So those are the two things I want to talk about. Understand your purpose when it comes to finances in Christ Jesus, and do not underestimate the place of a professional when it comes to financial advice.
Yeah, very good. Marilyn.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to say that the story that your money tells about you, and you talked about this in the Dollars and Cents sermon series, that, you know, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. And look at your checkbook to see what is it, or what you're spending money on reflective of who you want to be. So the story that you are living with the money that you have, or which you feel that you don't have, whatever the case may be, if it's not coinciding for the story of your life that God has for you and that you yearn for, which is your, you know, the Spirit working inside of you, you can change that. And it's changing with small decisions. It's the small things that you start saving. As Morax had said, you start now. Or you start tithing, you start now. And these things will start to fall into place. And it's that story that your finances tells that you can make those changes to happen, to get out of debt, $1 at a time, one step at a time. I say to my kids all the time, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You just can't go tackle the whole thing at once, but just start. And God has a good plan, and that story is reflective of God's plan in your life. So I would just be really encouraging about just starting and getting the help and moving in a direction that maybe you've been moving in one direction and now it's time to move in another direction.
Yeah, very good. Morax.
There's a parable about the master that traveled and he gave his servants money, and I'll just focus on the servant that didn't do anything with that money and just buried it. And when the master came back, he said, even if you were not going to do anything, you could have put this, I think he said, in a bank to at least yield interest. And I'll just focus on the youth right now and say, you are at a very good place being young now. And now is the time to work on being disciplined with, even if it's just a little $5 a month you're putting away. Get into a habit of saving for, you want to have a big expense down the road, or you want to buy a gift for your mom. Get into the habit of saving. Get into the habit, and pray about it, of paying your tithes. And God will give you the grace, the wisdom to know how to continue to just be diligent about using that money wisely, be it saving and paying your tithes, be it being generous and helping those in need. But at your young age, you have a very long pathway. If you start at that young age, you'll be surprised where the power of compounding interest can help you by the time you're much older.
Yeah, no, really good. You know, the whole idea of getting rid of debt so that we can save more and give more is so freeing. And, you know, really just wonderful because really that's God's heart, to give more and to be generous. And it's the good works that he's called us to. And I know for Clarice and I, my wife and I, just being able to bury our debt, get rid of our debt, save, give more is so freeing and so wonderful. You know, we got our income tax return back just this week, and so, you know, Clarice said, well, you know, what do you know, should we tithe on that? And I said, well, you know, I believe that the Bible calls us to bring our tithes and our offerings, tithes and offerings. So I said, you know, why don't we take that, the tenth of that, and sit down and think about what we could do with it. Now, this was just as I was leaving the house today, and you know, who could we bless? And you know, wouldn't maybe be just one person, maybe be several or numerous people, maybe be kind of random or something. But just the thought of getting that money, taking that money and blessing people, I don't know, there's just something exciting about that. Something that just resonates with God and, of course, expresses His kingdom. And so that's where we're all headed. And, you know, I want to thank all of you for coming and doing our part 2 panel. And for those of you who've tuned in, thank you very much. I hope that you found this helpful. We do have all the sermons on our YouTube channel. And if you want to access them there, it was a 4-part series called Dollars and Cents, and we went over a lot of principles of what the Bible says in regards to money and those kinds of things. But thank you for tuning in, and thank you very much for taking the time. Yeah, God bless.